It's coming at, it's coming at, it's coming at, it's coming at,
Attractions.
it's coming at, it's coming at, it's coming at.
Attractions.
Coming attractions for you. We've got the movies and the TVs, baby, for your enjoyment. Coming attractions for you. You know you want to listen for our reviews. They are really good.
Welcome to Coming Attractions, the podcast you go to for all the sexy stuff you need to know about movies, TV, and all other things pop culture. Nick Milligan, Joe Frost, thank you for coming in once again. My name's Dan Flegg. How you guys going?
All right. How about you, Nick?
Very well. Now I've got some celery in front of me.
I can
yeah.
see that. Yeah, it looks...
I was concerned about the Tabasco levels, but I'm not anymore. Yeah.
For everyone at home, they're adequate. Nick, I understand you've gone to see a foreign film. We're getting cultured this time around on Coming Attractions. Elle, tell me a little bit about the film.
I try to stay cultured with seeing the odd French movie. Elle is the latest film from Paul Verhoeven, the master of subversion from the Netherlands. He's a famous Dutch director whose big step into American cinema was RoboCop. And of course he did Total Recall, Basic Instinct, and the criminally underrated Showgirls. He then really stepped back a fair bit. This is his first film in 10 years.
Really? So it's
Yeah.
been 10 years.
Yeah, he made a film called Black Book, and this is his return. And it's a pretty divisive film, very subversive, everything you would really expect from Paul Verhoeven. And it features a pretty stunning performance from Isabelle Huppert, the French actress. And look, it's a psychological thriller with a pretty dark comic thread to it, which is interesting given its subject matter. It's essentially about a woman who, in the opening scene of the film, in something of an anti-trigger warning, you might call it, she is raped in the opening scene. The film opens with her being attacked on the floor of her home, and then we basically follow this character and how she deals with it. And every step of the way, she's quite unpredictable. She doesn't report it to the police. She basically just picks herself up and says, I'm going to not let this affect me and continue on with my life. And then it turns into this sort of interesting sort of dance where the attacker starts contacting her, and she just really holds her ground and doesn't allow herself to... she doesn't cower, and she doesn't allow herself to be intimidated by this person. So I've no doubt that there'd be corners of the feminist community that would have issues with it, but it's an incredibly well-made film, masterfully acted, and is in fact the French entry in the Academy Awards this year. So it may be nominated for Best Foreign Language Film. And look, it's the best performance from a female that I've seen this year. I really think that Isabelle Huppert would deserve to be nominated for Best Actress. So it'll be interesting to see whether she is. But it's certainly a very impressive film. I really liked it.
Such intense subject matter. Is the content treated in the way it should be? Obviously, this is a bit of a nerve topic, I suppose, especially, here.
Three guys discussing it, let's be honest. This is a super, super touchy thing for us to discuss because we not in I don't know. I don't even know the term for it, but we don't have the sensitivity necessarily to deal with this. We could be far from the mark. But was Verhoeven?
Of course, written and directed by men as well. But look, I guess the question is, how should this sort of subject matter be handled? This film challenges that from the get-go. It's Isabelle Huppert, her character Michelle, is never really portrayed as a victim, even though she has been the victim of this assault. The way that she handles it and conducts herself throughout the movie is really challenges your notion of how a woman should react to this. And that's part of the sort of fascinating aspect of the movie. And she sells it. You can believe this character. She's, I guess around the age of 50. She's got a great career, a very busy life, and she just says, "Well, I'm not going to let this be an obstacle. It's simply a speed bump, basically." And she doesn't report it to the police for reasons which are revealed in depth. And there's some twists in the movie that I'd be spoiling if I went into too much detail. But it handles it with, dare I say, a sense of humour, which is why it'll be a challenging film for some people. That there'll be strong reactions for and against, basically.
It's really interesting that Paul Verhoeven, after 10 years, comes back with what I suppose, based on what you've told us, is a very, I guess, cerebral film, a film that makes you think. And what he's done throughout his career, particularly with American films, is films that I guess cleverly make you think, but like you're tricked into thinking that you're not thinking about it. A film like Starship Troopers, where
he's a puppet master in that way, though, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember being a kid, and RoboCop was the thing that my parents were like, "Oh no, it's too violent. You can't watch that." And that's the whole point of it. It's just gross violence the whole way through, just to send up that whole idea. And it's interesting that he's then come along with something that, does it send it up? I don't even know.
Well, it doesn't send it up. I mean, obviously, films like Total Recall and Starship Troopers were, particularly Starship Troopers was a black comedy, subversive in the sense that you're rooting for the humans in that film, when it's sort of evident that the humans are actually the sort of the bad guys. So that's what he does. He gets under your skin. His stories creep up on you. He's definitely a provocateur. He had Basic Instinct, of course. So a lot of his films have contained extreme violence and a lot of sex. This has quite a bit of confronting sex in it. It's a very sexual film. It's a very adult film. But, I think he handles it in a very intelligent way. I mean, there's many ways to read this film, and that's why, it is so interesting these days. Films are pretty one-dimensional. This is a film that you could sit down at a dinner party and discuss for a couple of hours and have a pretty robust debate about. And I think there's something to be said for that. So I was impressed by it. I walked away with a sense that he'd actually created a pretty strong, impressive female character. And while people might disagree with the way that she goes about her reaction to it and might think that it's unrealistic, perhaps, I think that would be one of the assertions. I think Isabelle Huppert completely sells it, and you believe her as a character who is herself a very, very complex creation. But it's ultimately beautifully, the aesthetics of it, it's a beautiful looking movie. He's very much an auteur. It's very cinematic to look at, very well acted. And as a male, I suppose my response to it was, I thought it was pretty impressive. But it will be very, very polarizing. It'll be very divisive.
I wonder, it was, now we were reading up about it beforehand, and there was discussion of it having been filmed in Boston. The whole idea that it could have been an American film. Do you think perhaps, not to be too sort of, hoity-toity about it in terms of, a French film is better than an American film, but do you think it would have translated? Would it have worked as an English language film or an American film?
Well, he has said that it was going to be set in Boston, and he felt that it couldn't be made effectively in America. And I think what he was talking about was probably forms of censorship and probably forms of watering down certain elements of it and probably making her more of a victim. He said he couldn't make the film he wanted to make in America. He had actresses in mind, from Sharon Stone to Diane Lane, from Nicole Kidman to Marion Cotillard. So there was a lot of actresses, and all of them would have done a great job. But he actually decided that France was the best place to shoot it. He learned French specifically so he could make the film in France and communicate with the cast and crew. So he felt that France was definitely the best place to be. And obviously, French films do tend to have a sensibility, and then often those French films are a little bit, there's room to be a little bit more subversive and not cutting edge as such, but to explore certain themes to the extent that one might want to explore them and not hold back. And this film certainly does not hold back.
Certainly some intense and controversial themes are here, but obviously some great performances. If you were to rate the film out of 5, what would you rate it, Nick?
I'll give it 4.5. It's
Wow.
one of the better films I've seen this year, and I would say Isabelle Huppert's performance is probably the best female performance I've seen this year. So it's a very, very impressive movie.
Worth getting along to then.
Very much. It opened Thursday. This week it opened, and will get a very limited run in Australia as you would expect, but it is playing here in Newcastle and is worth seeing. Absolutely.
Classic is playing here in Newcastle. Doesn't happen often, and also we will go to air far later than when we've recorded this. Check your local times.
100%. Thank you for listening. We'll be back for part 2 soon.
Welcome back to Coming Attractions. Now, one of the big franchises coming our way in the next few years is Universal Monsters, and the first film in this rebooted franchise from Universal is The Mummy, and the trailer has just dropped. It stars Tom Cruise and Russell Crowe as Dr. Jekyll. And I guess we're going to see a series of films with crossover characters bringing back all the classics like Dracula, Frankenstein, of course, Dr. Jekyll, and Van Helsing. Guys, what are our feelings about the upcoming franchise in this Mummy trailer?
It's certainly an interesting one, and I suppose having announced so many films, so many individual characters, I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of crossover. I'm assuming we're going to get a universe that will exist. I don't really know how to feel about it because it's been hit and miss, I guess, over the years with the way in which these films have gone. Joe, do you feel the same way? I need to see something before really knowing, but it kind of feels like it depends whose hands these films are in as well.
Well, it's interesting that it's gone the way of, I guess, the big Hollywood blockbuster at the moment. It's directed by Alex Kurtzman, who up until this point has been a successful writer. But from best we can work out, this is his directorial debut. And it's a very common thing for the big studios these days to sort of say, listen, we're banking on the stars and the story and the universe. And as the director, your job is to make a film and to answer to the producers. It is the death of the auteur. It is very much like you make the film that we tell you to make, get it done the way we want it done. And this is the first one which, from this point onwards, Alex Kurtzman has been announced as the producer for several to come. They're banking on him, but at the same time, I feel like they're going to make a lot of decisions. Universal are going to make a lot of decisions independently of their director.
It's interesting, though. There's a reason why these characters are so iconic in a literary sense, but also, hallowed characters as far as cinema is concerned, at least in the early days of cinema anyway. So there's legs here. It could be really, really good, but I don't know. Rusty and Tom, have they got it? Do you reckon they're the guys to get the job done for this Mummy film? Do you reckon they're the ones to do it? They can. I know they've put in sterling performances before, but I know how you feel about Rusty, Joe. So
yeah, Nick, I'll let you field this one because I've got some pretty strong opinions on Russell Crowe. So
Well, I'm a big Russell Crowe fan, and look,
right?
Yeah,
Guy's
absolutely.
a genius.
He is.
Oh,
He
God.
turns up.
He turns up.
He's a fantastic actor, and look, you don't get Tom Cruise involved unless you're aiming pretty high. It's any film that he's in is a Tom Cruise movie.
That's what I thought as well, though.
Two guys who actually neither of them come with, they're not doing it for free.
No,
This is an expensive thing, if only on the lead actors. And Rusty might have a nothing part, and he'd still be saying,
no. They're going to follow. They're going to follow the same pattern that these crossover universe films have, in the same way that Marvel does and DC's trying at the moment. They might set him up, but he's obviously looked at the script and he knows what's coming, and he hasn't signed up. This is, for Rusty, I'm assuming, is going to be a multi-film deal. So for him to put pen to paper and say, I'm on board for 2 films, if he, depending on how these next couple of films go as well, but you'd assume that would have been optioned to him by this stage.
Well, there's 2 films that have been announced with release dates with no title. We don't even know what projects they are, but you can assume that one is probably going to be a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde film starring Russell Crowe. I'm wondering if one of the kind of ideas behind this reboot will to be kind of going for like a semi-realistic sort of
You think
franchise.
it'll be gritty? Is that what you're
I
thinking?
think because you look at when Hugh Jackman played Van Helsing and the Mummy films that Stephen Sommers did with Brendan Fraser, they were adventures, but particularly the Van Helsing one was a very heightened reality, special effects driven, comic movie.
They felt period film
Yeah,
as well. Like
Very much
that
so,
was the
yeah.
vibe I got. And knowing what we do know about this new Mummy film, the fact that it's going to be in modern day is really, really interesting. And perhaps you are right. Maybe they're thinking a modern imagination of all of these characters could be a
Pretty
reimagination.
realistic reboot of these.
well, kind of like what Nolan did with the Batman films. It could be that kind of thing, whether it's actually gritty and realistic, but with these monsters in them.
the problem I think that you would hope they have learned from is that, all right, they've made money and they're going to press on with the whole Justice League and that style of things. But Nolan did this Batman that it was like, all right, suspend disbelief and then go, oh, yeah, I get how this is not completely ridiculous in your standard comic book film way, which, again, that's fine. But then they went and tried to do it with Superman. It's like, imagine if this guy who comes from a totally different planet and is the ultimate unbeatable superhero, but like, let's ground it in a thing that's really believable. You're like, come on.
Yeah, but they could do this. Like, I don't know if it's going to work. I have a lot of trepidation even thinking about the notion that this could work. I don't know how the Mummy thing's going to work, but maybe they've thought about the notion of these characters to the point that they're going to try and shoehorn in some really modernized ideas to make a Mummy idea work. I can see the Jekyll and Hyde thing working
Snowden
really well.
and the Mummy.
Jekyll and Hyde could work. I can see that.
Yeah.
And that could actually be a really, really interesting cerebral film if done right. And to be fair, there's been a lot of... I think the BBC actually did a series called Hyde over the last decade as well,
Yes.
which was really, really good. James Nesbitt, I believe, played both Jekyll and Hyde. And it was a really, really interesting portrayal of this... the duality of the characters, which has always been there, but that was based in modern day, and it worked. It was really, really good. It was a really fun romp, and for the most part, it was sold on the basis of having a really good lead. And it seems as though they're thinking, if we're going to make this work, we're going to have to sign up some people that really believe in what exists inside of the characters and the script. And you've got Rusty and Tom. You'd like to think that those guys are fairly selective about what they're doing at the moment. I know they're going to be throwing money at them, but on the same token, they could do anything, So they've got enough money, so you'd like to think that maybe there's something here that we don't know about at the moment that might work.
I'm quite intrigued by the whole idea of the Universal monsters, and it's such an interesting idea that Universal have been able to corner this thing and say, Universal monsters, these belong to us. And when you go through them, you're like, no, they don't. That's public domain, man. Dracula, the Mummy, Jekyll and Hyde, these were based on novels written centuries ago. There is no part of this that they own, but they've managed to own it.
And that is a very interesting point as well, moving forward, because these iconic characters, now that they're owned IPs, as it were, is it going to stop people making films about the same characters or similar versions of them? Are we now not going to see anything but the Universal characters because there'll be a lawsuit if somebody tries to do something different with these characters? Even though there's been so many iterations of them over the years now, both in film and in novels and things like that. It's kind of concerning. Like you kind of like the idea that those characters are still up in the air, and maybe someone amazing can grab hold of that and do something really different. I don't like the idea of Universal going, "Sorry, mate, these are ours."
Yeah, well, I think people probably will still be able to make movies about these characters. I imagine to some extent they're in the public domain, as you said. I mean, obviously there was a Frankenstein film recently with James McAvoy. There was I, Frankenstein, which I think was an Australian production that had Aaron Eckhart in it, which was a massive flop. But yeah, I mean, I can't imagine they can really prevent people from making more Dracula movies. It's such a ubiquitous, character.
Well, I would rephrase them. Independent studios of what Universal is might think we're not going to try and do Dracula against Dracula, or we're not going to try and do a monster film that we have been thinking about and place it against these films.
But that's never been a problem before, Last week we were discussing which brilliant White House destruction film was it? White
House
House
Down.
Down versus Olympus Has Fallen. Like, you know, and then there's Armageddon versus
Was it Deep Impact?
Deep Impact. Yeah, I mean, they've
But
never
those
been
films
afraid.
they would have taken a hit though. Like
Yeah,
you know,
but
like,
for sure. But I think that's one of those things where, you know, if Warner's or Disney wanted to, they could go, no, screw you. Like, we're going to do
Nah,
we're going to do
I
a
don't-
Jekyll and Hyde film as well.
I
Like,
don't believe you. I don't believe that anymore. I think maybe 10, 15 years ago, sure. But I think I know for some reason Hollywood doesn't have original ideas anymore. I don't understand why they don't and why they're not willing to bank on original ideas, but they're not. And this is a perfect example of that. We're going backwards to make new films. I just don't think that a studio now would be like, you know, 10 years forward from the things you're talking about. I just don't think that they're going to be like, let's challenge, because we don't even know if we're going to make money off this, and we're already, you know, we're not going to throw money at this.
Well, this is the
project.
amazing part as well, is that they don't know if they're going to make money on it, and they've planned this entire. Are we going to call it the Universal Universe? I suppose.
Just call it the Universal.
The Universal. They had a crack at it a few years ago with Dracula Untold, and it was the worst. It sucked. And you know, and like that was the one they were like, we're gonna reboot this whole franchise. Like, this is like their second or third crack at it, right? Where I think they started with The Wolfman starring Benicio, where they were like, yeah, this is the one that's gonna restart the whole thing, and everyone's gonna want to see us, you know, Marvel style, because Marvel have been going on for what must be the better part of a decade at this point.
Maybe longer. Yeah.
And so they were like, all right, we're going to have a go. Now, this is their third or fourth attempt at it, and thus far they have been abysmal failures, and you wonder how far into it they will go. Like, this time, it's like, look, we thought we'd take our chances with, you know, not nobodies, but, you know, lesser-known actors, and, you know, make a film that maybe would just be good enough that people are interested. And instead, what turned out was terrible film starring nobody that nobody saw. This time around, they're like, all our chips are on the table. There's Tom. There's Rusty. Let's make this universe work. And if it doesn't, I mean, I wonder how far into it, you know, like we said, there are two films with nothing attached to it except a release date.
They're banking on stars, not scripts, though. And look, I haven't read anything on this. We've only seen the trailer, but the long and the short of it is, if they don't have the content there to make it work, then the names aren't going to matter, and they'll walk. And I want it to work. There's some incredible characters there, you know. Like, so have they got? They've got Frankenstein.
Well, hey, it's all free, man. They can have whoever they want.
There's
That-
an
the book
Invisible
is-
Man movie coming out. There's another Wolfman film coming out. They've already said this.
They've announced a Bride of Frankenstein, but do you
Right.
know what? There's a lot that is well worth discussing, and I look forward to discussing it. But until we've got a little bit more info, I think we might have to just also hold fire for now, and we'll be back in part 3. Cool. All right. Welcome back to Coming Attractions. As our final aspect of this week, we are going to be discussing, well, there was an interview or a feature in Variety that was that came out this week with Sigourney Weaver, in which she discussed the upcoming Alien 5 with Neil Blomkamp. I think I
the
said that.
helm.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
you nailed it. Yeah.
Nailed it. All right, cool. Now, she says she's very excited about it, but it was from an interview that took place in July, has since been released as a feature, and in the interim, we've been told that Alien 5 is on indefinite hold because of Alien Covenant coming out. Dan, what are your thoughts on us taking time and waiting for Alien 5 to come out so that we can wait for Covenant?
Not good, Joe. Not good at all. If we've learned anything from the failed Prometheus experiment, it's that you know, shit don't stick. And that's how I feel about it at the moment. Maybe the new follow-up to Prometheus will be good. I don't know. Hopefully they can rectify some of the horrible elements that we talked about actually in our previous podcast. Coming Attractions. The thing I am the most excited about, really, off the back of this Variety interview, is the fact that Sigourney has said that Blomkamp actually has a finished script. Like, it's done. And I find that really interesting because, for one, there's a body of work ready to go. For the second part of that as well, he's released a lot of concept art as well. So he spent quite a bit of time trying to put together an Alien film that we have no timestamp on at this point. At the end of the day, though, I feel like he's the guy to do it. If you would ask me which Alien film I'm excited about, the one that's going to be coming out next year, or Blomkamp's question mark film, it's the big question mark for me. I'm down with that. He's the guy to do it. He's got form. He did Chappie, District 9, Elysium as well. He's got a really quirky sensibility in the way in which he presents his sci-fi ideals. He knows how to inject humor, and I think maybe, and look, Sigourney Weaver has said this would be the swan song for the Ripley character. I think maybe some happiness might be good in this last film, knowing that if she's signing off, I want a bit of happiness, because it's been, those films they're so isolated and they're so claustrophobic in the way in which they're presented, and I really, I just want a bit of happiness if we're going to say goodbye to this character, and that makes me just the idea of it makes me more excited than this whole film that we know is going to be coming out next year.
Nick, what are your thoughts? Like, are you excited? Are you concerned?
No, not at all. I'm concerned that we're waiting for Covenant instead of this fifth Neil Blomkamp movie. I think, like Dan said, based on Prometheus, we're all a bit skeptical about whether it will be a success, which is a shame because, with Ridley Scott at the helm and the material being what it is, we shouldn't be. But Prometheus really was a disappointment. Neil Blomkamp would be a great director for an Alien film. His sense of really strong science fiction visuals, his inventiveness, his ability to direct really impressive set pieces and action sequences and everything. He would, like the previous Alien directors, the four of them have been fantastic. He would.
So let's do a quick rundown.
Well, of course, Ridley Scott, who did the amazing first film.
Mm-hmm.
Then, of course, we had James Cameron. David Fincher did Alien 3, and then Jean-Pierre Jeunet did Alien Resurrection, which is sort of my favourite of the four movies, interestingly enough. I think he did a beautiful job with that. It was beautiful and dark, had some really gothic science fiction imagery. And
it had some moments that I still think about. The cloning room sequence in that film. And whilst as of some of its parts, there may be some flaws there, there's moments that I haven't forgotten. And, I mean, money can't buy that kind of stuff for me, I think. When somebody really nails scenes like that, it's something... If I haven't seen that film in over a decade, and I can still visualize all the elements that exist there. Do you feel the same way with that kind of stuff as far as the last film? Well,
that's what he did. He brought visual moments to it which hadn't been seen in that franchise before. That scene where the aliens are underwater and chasing them through that flooded kitchen. There's some beautiful imagery which stays with you. I really loved it. Had a really strong cast too. Look, Ron Perlman at his very best.
He was really good. Believe it or not, he actually played a really gruff character in that one as well.
Gruff, dry badass.
Yeah.
What?
I think he smoked a cigar at one stage as well. It threw me. I didn't know what was going on.
He was playing against type, Perlman. Yeah. But look, I think the prospect of having Sigourney back as Ripley would make most of us pretty giddy at the idea. I'm certainly in that corner. So,
and where is the character at that stage as well? Timeline-wise, we have no idea where this.
Well, are we dealing with a clone as well? There's a lot to ask.
That's a really good question.
It's hard to say, but we know that Blomkamp's got an idea. He was very active on Twitter, tweeting about the fact he wanted to make the film. He put up concept art. He was all across it, and by the sounds of it, he's written a screenplay which Sigourney likes. She's read. She sounds keen to do it based on the July interview. The fact that they're stalling it, I mean, you wouldn't want to wait too long, I wouldn't think. If she's keen, you probably want to strike while the iron's hot and start shooting the film. I don't think it would really clash too much with this strange prequel that's coming out.
Do you know what's strange is that there is this prequel coming out, if I could steal directly the words from your mouth. But, I mean, we're talking about what has suddenly become almost contrasting and competing, I guess, film franchises. The Alien versus the prequel Alien, whatever Ridley Scott, who I guess has, the right to say, no, it's mine, I made it, and this is, these are my films. And sure, but also no, man, you made the last one and it
There
was
shouldn't be
terrible."
parallel lines, though.
Exactly.
It doesn't feel like they're opting towards an alien universe, and I don't want that either, because I mean, the original films are just, they're seminal sci-fi. For the budget that the original Alien film was made on, it's quite incredible what they actually did with that, and how much it stayed with sci-fi audiences as well. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but
It was between 9 and 11 million in 1979.
and it ended up
It
making
made about 200 million worldwide in 1979 money. Yeah.
yeah,
And
Right.
everything it's made since. So
it's quite
very
incredible.
successful film.
Yeah,
One of the best films ever, really, not just in science fiction. It's a masterpiece of a film. I guess the other reason that they might be holding off is that this new Covenant film might in some way contradict something that's in Blomkamp's if he's written this without perhaps being completely across what Ridley Scott is planning. That's the other aspect of it.
Is Ridley Scott just becoming George Lucas? Right?
I didn't want to say it. but-
Is he? I don't know. I've got a theory on Ridley Scott. His film posters need to have his last film written on it. He can't say from the director of Gladiator anymore. That's not fair. It's not the last film you made. The last film you made was terrible. I don't even care
it
which
Robin
one it was.
Hood?
No,
Or
he made The Martian, which was actually a success. So.
Oh, God
yeah.
damn it. Oh, well, fine, Milligan.
But
Yes.
I wasn't a big fan of The Martian.
I heard that the amount of Americans high-fiving each other at the end of that film was as high as Rocky.
Well,
believe it
there's
or
more
not.
than high fives going on.
Yeah,
There
they
was a lot of-
scienced the shit out of that one. So, you know.
It was Apollo 13 on Mars.
To be honest with you, though, like getting back to Alien, I just want to see Sigourney Weaver at the time in which the original Alien films came out was one of the first real alpha female characters that really kicked ass and did it so well over a succession of films. I want that back. At the moment, it's a rabble of cast trying to deal with some kind of faux xenomorph characters that have, popped up in the Prometheus storyline. We know it works, so why not just do that?
Yeah.
It's really obvious what has worked, and that's why the original films have been so successful. It just, for me, my mind boggles the fact that they've just said, you know what, let's push that aside. We'll take elements that we think work, and they don't work, and it's been proven that they don't work, and they're making another film off something that doesn't work. It's like, if you drive a car to market with 3 fucking wheels on it, right? Yeah, and you get there and you're like, oh my God, we made it. I've got milk. I've got those magic beans that I needed to make those great films I was hoping for. You don't go, oh, you know what? Let's push this bad boy to Sydney and just see where we can go with this car. Yeah, you abandon the car at that stage, and you know what? You just you get out of there. Like you just get you're done. You're done. And I don't. It feels like I'm having a brain aneurysm when I think about this.
I feel like I'm taking crazy pills.
Why is this happening? I don't get it. Like it just bothers me. I don't know. Look, maybe I got a bit too emotional there. We're supposed
That's
to
all
be.
right. That's all right. We need to let Blomkamp off the leash. We need to let this script out of the bag and start working on that. So maybe we'll write Ridley a letter, a harshly worded letter.
Harshly worded letter to Ridley Scott.
Ask him to take a back
I'm
seat.
sure he'll take us very seriously. But that's all the time we have for this week of Coming Attractions. And we'll see you. Curming Attractions.
Curming attractions.
Oh, yeah. We'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.